It said the pinker the hair, the colder, but because of his jet black pink hair, he was sold to a duke as a wife by his father. Planning to accept his fate and give up, he discovered the duke husband was a vegetable. Even more bizarrely, his mother-in-law wanted him to poison the duke. Pure-hearted Lys didn't want to do evil, but instead was rewarded with a gentle slap from his mother. And with that slap, he awakened memories of a past life. It turned he had transmigrated into a novel he read in his. In it, the stepmother, vying for the family head, forced him to poison the duke. After Lys lost his usefulness, he was made a scapegoat and sent to meet his demise. Lys was tearfully helpless. Transmigrating as cannon fodder but the whole family turned out to be cannon fodder. To survive, he decided to save the unlucky duke. After casually dealing with he went to the duke's room, expecting a greasy old man in the duke's villa. But when he pulled the curtain, he found a man with a handsome face and flawless muscle contours. In just 3 seconds, countless Cupid's arrows pierced his heart. As a top-tier looks enthusiast, the duke was exactly his aesthetic ideal. But more than that, he was worried. How could he save the duke? No matter how much he racked his brain, the entire Duke of Kylos' estate was described in fewer than 300 words, and there was no useful information at all. He decided to sleep on it before making a plan. Sir, I don't want to die, nor do I want to harm. Perhaps the journey through worlds had been and drowsiness quickly over. In his dreams, he found himself in a place of complete darkness. Suddenly, a pair of large hands grabbed. You can't escape the palm of my hand. Lys woke up from the nightmare. When he saw where he was so frightened he immediately. How could he have fallen asleep next to him? Suddenly, the door was kicked open. A maid stormed in with a fierce and malicious, "I'm cannon fodder A, assigned to serve." She threw a basin of face-washing water. Her attitude was arrogant. Seeing the ice-cold water Lys immediately knew this maid was sent by the malicious mother-in-law to monitor. He calmly picked up the basin, acting indifferent. After all, now was the time to endure. Cannon fodder A was shocked. This woman wasn't following the usual script. She expected Lys to throw a fit so she could report it. Then they went to see the mother-in-law. The luxurious decor was 10 times grander than the duke. Lys pretended to be obedient to the mother-in-law, but she ignored him. She told him not to stand there. Lys suppressed his anger and said, "All right, just you wait." At that moment, another person entered the room. The man was named Helkin, the resident doctor of the duke's estate. Seeing his ridiculously thick glasses, Lys suddenly remembered Helkin's storyline. The man was actually a master of poison and had been bribed by the Duke's collapse was all thanks to him. It seemed the plan was to have Lys team up with Helkin against the Duke. Because of the previous poison, the Duke would remain unconscious for at least another year. But that was too long for the mother. Her son was turning 18 in just 3 months. The Duke had to be disposed of within 3 months. Only then would the Emperor, to her son, securing the inheritance. If the family elders had time to react, the title would be hard to obtain. That's why she summoned Lys and Helkin. From now on, follow Helkin's instructions. Whatever he tells you to feed the Duke, Lys obediently agreed. Don't worry, I'll follow orders. Little did she know, Lys had already devised a plan. After leaving the room, Lys sought out Helkin to have a private conversation. Lys locked the doors and windows. He smiled kindly. Helkin handed over the poison to him. The man had no idea he was about to lose everything. Lys accurately recited all of Helkin's information. Helkin felt a sense of foreboding. The smile on Lys's face gradually turned sinister. "Hey buddy, here's some good news," he said. "Since your work, I decided to do a little digging on you. Turns out you've been stealing jewelry from the Duke's estate." Helkin immediately began to deny it. "My dear, don't wrongfully accuse me." Lys simply pointed at a cabinet with a sly grin. "It's hidden in there, isn't it?" Sweat started pouring down Helkin's face. After all, he had secretly stashed away billions worth. Lys reassured him. "Relax, I just want to work with you." Helkin immediately became as obedient as a puppy. He decided to play along, planning to transfer the gold later. But Lys had anticipated his plan. "Ha ha ha," he said. "For the sake of I recorded our entire conversation." This completely broke Helkin's spirit. A sense of helplessness filled his entire being. Lys then demanded he create an antidote. But due to plot constraints, Helkin claimed he couldn't. Lys believed he wasn't lying, and temporarily asked him, with a simple tonic, he would think of another way to heal the Duke. Next, Lys went to find the Duke's butler. His name was Arling, a loyal servant of Duke Kylos. Arling was supposed to care for the Duke, but the mother-in-law, fearing the Duke would wake, had schemed to keep him away. She aimed to frame Lys as the culprit. Lys handed over the tonic from Helkin to the butler and subtly hinted he should check its contents. Arling was puzzled. Isn't Lys supposed to be working for the malicious? Why is he being so kind? Fortunately, the tonic was harmless. Arling thought the Duke looked so pitiful. His mother had passed away when he was very young. His father brought back a stepmother that, perhaps as karma, was never able to have children. But coincidentally, his father, while was hit by a train and left with rumors spreading. The Duke's family reputation at the time, Kylos was only a few months. The stepmother naturally became the de facto ruler of the Dukes. Once she had her own child, Kylos, as he grew up, became to ensure her son would inherit the title. She tried poisoning him, sending assassins, but none succeeded. So she sent a young Kylos to the battlefield, hoping he would die. But to her surprise, 19-year-old Kylos returned, having earned countless military. Thus, he naturally inherited the title of Duke. Despite the stepmother's years of schemes, Kylos didn't seek revenge. He exiled her to a remote estate, leaving her to her own devices. Her confidants were dismissed, and the estate finally returned to Kylos's control. He vowed to restore the family's glory. In his determination, he temporarily overlooked the lurking danger of ruthless adversaries. As a result, Helkin was bribed to poison him. Caught off guard, Kylos was poisoned. Lys couldn't help but feel pity for the man, a tragic victim of fate, wronged despite doing nothing. He had been repeatedly betrayed. Seeing the cracks and wounds on Kylos's hands, Lys felt even more sorrow. It must hurt, he thought. A strong desire to save him overwhelmed him. As he touched Kylos's arm, a golden light surged forth. It was warm, like the morning sun. Before their eyes, the wounds on Kylos's arm began to heal. His eyes widened in disbelief. Only divine power could produce such an effect. But according to the rule, all divine powers require divine. Only through spells can they. Could this be a golden finger cheat? If so, is it possible to wake him up? He placed his hand on Kylos's arm. Praying devoutly, he wanted to save this poor man. But after a dazzling flash of light, only the scars healed, with no other effect. It seems divine power does not cure poison. The use of power left it exhausted. Let's rest and continue tomorrow. But just as the woman left, Kylos's eyelashes twitched slightly. Deep inside his mind, the man was trapped in a place of total darkness. No matter how he struggled, he couldn't escape the most despairing moment. Suddenly, a ray of light appeared before. He finally broke free of the bond. He rushed towards the light. He regained consciousness. Sorting out his memory, Kylos realized he had been framed by his step. There was no one around. He guessed his loyal followers had been driven away. Looking at his smooth arm, he remembered it was once injured by a dark sword. It was said to never heal. There was no time to dwell. Gathering information was the priority. Under the cover of, he jumped out the window and headed to Butler Arlen's. Luckily, you weren't driven away. Arlen looked in surprise at his awakened master. With tears and snot running, he recounted the recent event. As Kylos had anticipated, after he fell unconscious, the woman quickly took control of the ducal residence. His night order and adjutant had all been replaced. The issue seemed to lie with Hulkin. Unexpectedly, Hulkin had betrayed him. He should have eliminated that woman earlier. But the butler hesitated and told him there was something even more absurd. Duke, you got married. The man was nearly scared to death. All right, you let me settle down before killing me, huh? But after thinking it through, this cheap wife of his was probably his stepmother's wife. She must have been raised to take the blame. Luckily, the marriage hadn't lasted long. He told Arlen to keep his recovery a secret and secretly contacted the night order and his adjutant. He planned to deliver a fatal blow to that woman once prepared. A few days later, his stepmother praised Lys. I heard from Hulkin that you completed your tasks well. From now on, stay by the Duke's side as much as possible. Don't let outsiders get close. Lys obediently agreed. He knew his stepmother was wary of the butler. Also, Miss Sienna would visit in a few days. You better watch your mouth when she's here. Hearing that name, Lys froze. Sienna was the heroine of the original and also Kyros' distant cousin. She attended the funeral after learning her cousin, Lys, was tried as the culprit for poisoning the Duke. But smart Sienna sensed something was wrong. She secretly investigated the Duke's. Before she found evidence, the Duke's estate was destroyed in a conspiracy. After that, Sienna traveled to restore the family's honor, seeking surviving elders of the family. During the journey, she met the heavily injured male lead, the third. That's how their love story began. But the problem lies at the novel's ending. The male and female leads had a happy ending. But the tragic part is, all supporting characters related to them died. This setup is terrifying, so I must avoid any connection with the heroine. She shouldn't appear until 3 months later. Why is she showing up so early? For now, I'll have to take it step by step. Save the Duke and stay away from the heroine. Damn, whose transmigration is this hard? The next morning, he went to Kairos's room. He didn't notice the man in front of him was pretending to. He opened the curtains. Despite the difficulties, I must face them positively. Good morning, Kairos. You look even more handsome today. I really want to hear your voice. Would it be soft like a puppy or strong? Looking at handsome men really improves my bad mood. The man couldn't help but. What is this woman talking about? And is something wrong with her brain? Talking to a vegetative person. Just then, a servant walked in. He handed Lise a basin of hot water. It used to be the butler's job to bathe the Duke, but now the task has been given to you. Lise immediately understood, her cheeks turning red involuntarily. Kairos also couldn't help but break into a cold, but the servant seemed unwilling to allow any refusal. He gritted his teeth, as if making a firm decision. His heart was pounding wildly. The servant started pulling down the blanket, but Lise grabbed him. Don't touch him. I'll do it myself. The servant was relieved. He didn't want to care for a vegetative person anyway. Meanwhile, butler Arlen also heard about this. He was so shocked that his reading glasses fell off. He rushed to the Duke's room as fast as he could. Their eyes met awkwardly. But from Lise's completely flushed cheeks, the butler knew things were going downhill fast. He quickly offered to take over caring for the Duke. Lise had been waiting for this. All right, then it's all yours. She quickly escaped the scene of chaos. After Lise left, Kairos instantly opened his eyes. This woman is so strange. I can feel her goodwill towards me. She says such weird things, and she's too shy. That doesn't fit with my stepmother's logic. I need to keep an eye on her in the future. The butler told him he had already written to Sienna, and she would be arriving at the Duke's estate. It turns out the heroine was summoned by Kairos. She's a very powerful magician. Her help is needed to deal with the step. It seems the plan can be moved ahead. Find a time to summon Hulken alone to see me. The next day, Sienna arrived at the Duke's estate. The stepmother enthusiastically went, but Sienna directly bypassed her and warmly greeted Lise instead. The stepmother's face immediately. Lise was startled. Sister, don't mess with me, please. It was hard enough to earn the stepmother's trust. Surviving in this tight spot is already Then he pretended to scold Sienna, saying she should have greeted the stepmother. Sienna wasn't upset. She apologized to the stepmother, but even so, she didn't want to talk much with her. Instead, she expressed her desire to have afternoon tea. Although the stepmother was internally she couldn't refuse, as the Lise was left speechless. He really didn't want to get involved, but he had no choice but to accompany. Even the servant was dismissed by her. Lise had a feeling she wanted to say something to him. Sienna noticed Lise's reluctance. She explained, I just feel a connection with you. I'd like us to be close friends. Lise felt she wasn't being, although in the original story, Sienna was a kind and she was ruthless to her enemies. Similarly, in her eyes, Lise was someone connected to her enemy. She either wanted to extract information about or use Lise to set a trap for her. So Lise decided to leaking some small pieces of information to her. He apologized to Sienna, saying he was overly concerned with the stepmother. His tone might have been too harsh. Sienna was taken aback. Why isn't he playing by? It's fine. I don't mind. From now on, we'll be. After parting with Lise, went to the Duke's room. He felt exhausted from all. He went to the Duke's room. He felt suffocated by this life of constant manipulation. Since he was already at the Duke's estate, he had to find a way to escape from here. Duke Kairos, I really hope you wake up soon. He expressed his sadness to the unconscious man. He noticed that the scars on Kairos's arm had almost He was now 100% certain it was divine. The original story mentioned and the clerics held extremely high status. Even the royal family had to respect them. If I become a cleric, I might be able to live safely in this world. Lise found his motivation to move forward. He didn't even notice when Hulken arrived. Hulken fed a potion to Kairos, but kept half the bottle and made Hulken drink it. Hulken was speechless. My weakness is in your hands, yet you still suspect. He took it in one gulp. The sturdy woman stood up, gently patted his head and said, Rest well. We'll see each other tomorrow. Hulken felt utterly miserable. Being a double agent was just too suffocating. As he was about to leave, he was stopped by Arlen. With a kind smile, Arlen said, Let's have a chat. Hulken hadn't yet grasped the situation when he saw the butler bowing to the Duke. When he turned his head, the Duke was sitting up, staring at him coldly. Hulken was terrified, thinking, It's over, it's all over. He truly thought he was doomed. He begged the Duke for mercy, but the sword was already at his neck. Kairos didn't plan to kill him just yet. He still needed him as evidence. to deal with the stepmother, so scaring him was enough. The room was filled with terrifying killing. Hulken was so scared he quickly promised, "I'll serve you loyally." For now, Kairos achieved his goal. But he also learned something from Hulken. For example, wasn't his cheap wife the stepmother's? Why was she helping him instead? And according to Arlen, his arm still had scars not long ago. Ever since Lise arrived, the scars began to fade, and with them, I regained confidence. "I'm really curious about what kind of power you have." He ordered Hulken to keep his recovery a secret. Neither the stepmother nor the Duchess could know. "Just listen to my orders," he said. "Otherwise, I'll send you to meet your maker immediately." Hulken was utterly terrified, threatened by the stepmother, threatened by the Duchess, and now threatened by the Duke. He felt deeply wronged. "Life is so hard for me," he thought.